I'm having a great time.
Okay, so what do you feel is the most significant and helpful information you learned in the metacognitive portion of our first unit? We mainly talked about brains and how they evolve over time and new things we can learn. We learned a lot about the parts of the brain and the hippocampus and things like the synapse.
We also learned about how parts of your brain can grow over time if you use them more.
I'd say adding to that, we also learned about how sleep can affect how our brains work and how our bodies function during the days.
We also learned that even when you're sleeping, your brain is still thinking. Like in the REM sleep, when you're in REM sleep, you're learning from your sleep.
I'd say, again, with the sleep, your brain just remembers a bunch of the memories that you've had or you're remembering. It just kind of solidifies and like locks them up so you remember, especially in like a deep sleep.
So what did you guys put for specific evidence?
I remember we listened to the guy talking on the podcast. Yeah. Definitely said a lot about sleep. Yeah.
And did you guys agree with like the older you get, you can still learn? And
yes.
Yes, I definitely agree. Yeah, agree. Yeah.
Sleep.
To add to the getting older thing, during the TED Talk about the stroke victims, even though they were older, they could still relearn things that they had learned before.
Going on to the second box, what learning and reading strategies did you find most helpful? I put that reading in a certain, like a long story with certain groups, like certain parts of the story, helped because we were able to talk about it and go through what we all thought about certain parts of the story and come together and discuss it.
Some learning strategies that I found is that when you take notes, you should take them in your own words instead of copying them down. Like what your teacher has, you shouldn't just write that down. You should connect it yourself and write them in your own words.
That way you remember it. Yeah.
Do you have personal experience with that, Dallas? Remembering it better than you've written it down in your own words?
Nope.
You can go over your notes later.
During Spanish, if you write down the words, it helps you remember how to spell them, and kind of helped me remember what they were, how to connect them to English.
I don't want to talk about Spanish right now, actually.
Yeah, I feel like on a side note, managing your time, that's what I thought was the most important thing I got out of this. I just think that managing your time can really help in the future for when you're learning and trying to get a bunch of different things done at a time. So.
I disagree. I don't believe that writing it down helps at all. I believe looking at it and using your common sense that you can memorize it.
Why?
Because that's your common sense. And you have a brain to remember things for a reason.
What do you guys think was the most helpful / like cool information that we learned in the unit?
That if you don't get enough sleep, it's equivalent to being drunk. It's pretty dope.
I agree.
I agree.
I don't know about that.
For me, learning about sleep was most interesting because it had so many negative impacts that I didn't really know about. That was interesting.
I agree with that because I can relate to it.
How do you relate to that, Bones?
I have problems going to sleep and getting up in the morning.
And why is that?
I don't know.
Would you guys agree that like technology plays a big role?
Yes.
Not
Yeah.
sleep and
Yeah.
Like social
I would.
Yeah,
It's
I
like-
agree with it, but then I also disagree because you can
Shut up,
use technology in certain ways. Like I read on my phone
Yeah.
before I go to bed. That helps me go to bed. So you can use
I
technology,
sometimes just read
but then it
actual
also can
book,
get
and
sick.
that helps me.
I agree.
So what you're saying is that it can be good and it can be bad.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
Depending
Yes.
on how you use it.
Others.
Unlike the podcast that it said that we shouldn't use like blue light. Like an
I have found that my reading on my phone is actually the black background and white words, so that helps me get away from light. So
Oh,
Yeah, or you can like put it on night shift mode.
Yeah.
does that really help?
Yeah,
Oh,
Yeah,
Illuminati.
Then it looks really yellow.
that's the point.
That's
It's
the
not
point.
supposed to be blue because it takes all the blue light out.
Yeah,
it turns
so-
yellow.
You know,
I
the
definitely
blue light that hurts your eyes.
I definitely agree with Lexi on the whole it can be good and bad. Because like she said, she reads on her phone, I'll read on my Kindle, and it actually kind of calms me down a little bit. So,
The last box says, what is something you've learned about yourself as a learner through the unit? Personally, I've learned that working in smaller groups, reading sometimes larger things, and having key points to discuss helps me understand the topic more that's at hand. So, you guys agree with that?
Yeah, I
Yes, most definitely.
agree, because interacting helps me
Definitely. Yep.
figure it out and understand it more.
Communicating and discussing helps you understand.
Yep.
Do you guys like working in like smaller groups or larger groups when it comes to discussing?
Depends on who's in the
Probably smaller.
groups, yeah.
When we are discussing, I like bigger groups. I don't know why. Just more ideas.
because you don't.
I feel like working in smaller groups, my idea is heard more. Things can be bounced off each other more.
And like I would say on top of that, if you find something like more interesting than something else and you're going into a smaller group, I feel like you might have like you're working harder to do something. I don't know if you guys agree with that or not, but
Get more out of it if you're not in a big group because you have to do. That's my idea.
Anything else?
We didn't talk much about communication, so what do you guys think is some of the most important things during communication?
Actually paying attention, listening, and interacting with the facts and information.
I remember Mrs. Hartwig talking about the the nonverbal part of communication outweighs the verbal part of communication. So like eye contact, all of the things that you don't really might not know that you're doing, that's a big part of communication.
Learning about like the different parts of it, like thinking about what you're gonna say, how you are gonna say it, like determines what the receiver does with it. How you respond.
What are some of your guys' views on being emotionally correct versus actually being what you think is correct in the brain? Do you think it's more important to be emotionally correct or actually correct?
I mean, I would say how you act, like how you like really
Like you go
How
off
you
of, like,
how you
say
say
your
it.
action,
Yeah.
how your emotions are presented. I guess it's more.
Yeah, I agree. Like you can say what you think is correct, but I would say it in a more
Yeah.
calm way or getting your point across, but also allowing others to think their own things. haven't heard a lot from you. What do you think?
What's your favorite part of it?
Got called out. That's not good.
I think good feedback is like really important. And walking out all of the businesses.
I think learning how to be a better communicator with us. Keep conversations going.
Just talking, just talking to people.
Yeah, I feel like we have a lot of conversations that are just like, "Hi, how are you?" And that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
But like learning how to better communicate.
And then like maybe talking with people. So
Yeah.
like
Since we do so much on.
Well, Chloe, we haven't heard a lot from you.
About the like sleeping, you know, how that like I think that it was important to learn about that because that's something we can do to like better our brains just by like a day-to-day thing, and then eventually it'll get better.
Finish your thought.
And then also like we've been learning about that in health class, so I could like relate it to that, so it helped a lot.
Thank you for sharing
Carol,
your
you want to say
information.
anything?
All right, good job. Stay right where you are. Outside circle. What did the inside circle do well?
They're gonna say nothing. Wow.
Something
I'm just confused with that.
of flowing thoughts together. Yes. Connecting things. Good. What else did they do well? Yeah, definitely. Everybody got in there. That's good. What else? Did we use evidence? Is that something that we would want to, if the second round, we'll want to improve on using more evidence? Okay.
Yeah.
Could they all be heard outside circle? Okay, so
Yeah, Whitney.
we'll want to be a little louder next time. Okay, what else did they do well? Yeah, they circled back around, which is what good conversations do. When you have a point that got missed, or there was an opportunity to build on that, yes, to circle back to it. That's great. Anything else? All right. So, what will the outside circle need to keep in mind so that they can improve the conversation even more? Sophie?
Making sure everyone is involved.
Okay, even more input from a balanced group. Okay, good. What else? And we mentioned we mentioned using more evidence to back up. Did we have very many clarifying questions? What's an example of a clarifying question that we could use?
I see it.
Like one that has an actual answer.
What?
What do you mean by
Yeah,
that?
what do you mean by that? Yeah. Can you elaborate? What evidence did made you think that? Yeah. Okay. So what I would like you to do is to quickly and quietly switch places.
Bye, parents.
Those in the inside circle,
I'm
make
jolly.
sure you know what your role will be
Oh, I'm sitting by you.
for the outside circle.
I'm sitting by you.
Good job, guys.
Oh, it's behind you.
Books on the floor.
I'm sitting
Everything off like the desk.
No problem.
No, there's someone sitting right there.
Oh,
where's
Mitchell could be sitting here. Mitchell, I don't think yeah.
Why does it matter so much?
It's warm for you.
Is it the fact that you can
I think it is. Red doesn't have any.
No, the seat's a lot. The seat's warmer.
Red puts this under your desk.
Whoops, guess I'm mistaken.
Yeah, I'm gonna point it out. Just so you know.
All right. Alright. So, does our second round, our now Insight Circle, do they need to pick up right from the very top of this discussion sheet?
Yes. No.
Start wherever you'd like. Can they connect to ideas that were from our previous round?
Oh, that's cheating.
No, they can, because they might have heard something. We do that in life. We connect to something someone else said. So whether it's in your conversation or someone else's conversation, if it's a thought that you're like, yes, this is a good thought, I want to explore this, go ahead and connect to that, especially since we've all heard that conversation. So it's a joint conversation, even though only part of you were able to speak. Right?
What we got here?
Questions? All right, you may begin.
All right. So, what do you guys feel is the most significant, helpful information you learned in this first unit?
Well, we listened to the Dr. Walker podcast. I had some problems sleeping before, and then I tried some of those out, and those some of the techniques he explained to us really helped us, or really helped me.
Well, I thought what was most helpful for me that I learned that no matter how old or smart you are, you can still get smarter because when you work your brain, it gets bigger.
I agree with Lydia because in the brainology apply it taught us that the more we learn things and repetition, it just makes our brain grow stronger and kind of like a muscle. Is there any particular strategy from the sleeping unit that helped anyone?
For me, getting to bed at the same time and waking up at the same time, that seemed to help me in getting on a schedule.
Anybody have anything to add?
I had a different answer, which was that knowing that your emotions can affect how well you learn, because in the article "What You Should Know About Your Brain," it talked about how if you're angry or overwhelmed or upset, you won't be able to register the information. It'll go automatically to a portion of your brain where it won't save it. You have to be calm or happy or a positive emotion in order to effectively store information.
I agree with you. I think that kind of goes with when you don't get enough sleep too. Your brain won't be able to hold all the information because it's not willing to and it's not all there. Anybody have a learning strategy that they would like to tell how it helped them and what they enjoyed about it?
I thought the picture to word summaries helped because, like, it helped visualize what it was saying on the paper, so that helped condense it.
Okay, how about you?
Instead of typing all my things out, I usually write it down, even if I'm going to have to type it up later. It helps me remember what I'm trying to learn.
I agree with Michaela because in 7th grade, when Mr. McDermott was a terrible teacher, my mom would make me write everything down like 3 times before I could go to bed.
That did what for you?
It kind of helped, but I still failed most of his tests.
I thought that the note-taking strategy was good, listening for cues when there's a lecture for key points and stuff.
I agree with Maya on that, and just in putting it in your own words also really helps because then you can might be able to make personal connections with that, and it'll help you remember it better.
On top of that, I like to add that when it's new content, it's a lot easier when you reword it for words that make sense to you, and just you can make more connections. When we talked about learning and how we can improve our learning, I learned that making more attainable goals and learning from watching other people helped me. Sarah, what helps you learn better? Like writing everything down sometimes.
I agree with Sophia in that, like, I learn better from seeing other people do it and then doing it myself rather than just being told how to do it and then being expected to immediately know.
One way you can watch and learn more about how you learn is just look at your past experiences when you're learning new content and observe yourself, like take notes on how you're doing stuff through your days.
And when you're taking notes, if you find out, like after you do it a couple times, that one way of taking notes doesn't work, maybe try a different way to take them. And don't always just stick to one way.
I agree with Mitchell. Trying new ways is a good way to see what suits you and how you can accomplish the most. Eden, how can you learn? How do you know? Like,
I mean, I agree with Mitchell to a certain point that you shouldn't. You should find the way you learn, but then you shouldn't just try learning one thing. There's an old saying that's called, "If it's not broken, don't fix it." There's no point in if you're learning a new thing and you're using a new method of doing it and it's working. There's no point in switching it because then that might just screw everything up again.
Kimberly, is there any specific way that you found that helps you learn?
Again, like what Sarah said and Kara said, I feel that writing things down also helps, and also being shown how to do something also helps.
during our communication portion, does anyone have anything that they learned how to be a more effective communicator?
Looking someone in the eye has helped me like communicate better.
Body language is a big thing.
Yes, body language. You can always tell how somebody's feeling, if they're feeling sad or happy or upset just by their body language and how they talk to you and stuff like that.
Yeah, in I think it was Miss Hartwig's presentation on the board, she said that only about 35% of information is verbally told to us, and the rest of it is through like tone of voice, body language, and everything else. Very little is actually just straight out given to us. The rest of it you have to read on a person.
Anyone else have anything to add?
You will always need to talk too. If you're always going to need to talk. If when you get a job, you'll need to talk to your boss. right now as a student, if you're struggling, you will need to talk to your teacher. And learning new communication skills and getting better with your communication skills is always a good thing to learn.
I agree with Mitchell, but there's always the problem of start talking when someone doesn't like talking. It's not the fact that they don't want to talk, it's the fact that they're scared to start talking. Because there's always the thought of the mind to be rejected, I guess.
I agree with that, and I think a good way to overcome that would be inviting other people to talk and learning new ways to try to read people enough so you know they have something to say and try to get it out of them, make them feel comfortable.
But then when you try and get information that they don't want to give, you put them in a situation where their mind goes crazy, I guess. That's how you explain it.
Like know how far to push.
Yeah, that would be the best.
Like know when there's a time to stop
Yeah,
talking.
and always keep practicing, and after practice, and the more you know the person, the more you'll know how much they want to share and what they would like to share and stuff like that.
I think it's important to know where you stand, like, and what's socially acceptable when you're talking to different people, like versus a teacher versus a peer.
There's different like voices that you use between a teacher and like during it, like if you're talking to a teacher, you're gonna probably be a little bit nicer. You're not gonna like argue with them like you do with your parents. Well, you would argue with them, but like you're not gonna yell at them like you would with your parents.
You're not gonna act around them the same way you would act around your siblings or anything like that.
Yeah.
So you're referring to the language registers information.
And like the tone of voice.
And sometimes when you're talking, if you're talking to somebody, you need to make sure you know, like, they know how you're talking. If you're using sarcasm, you should probably make sure that they know you're using sarcasm or things like that, just so they don't get confused.
All right. Very good. Outside circle. What did the inside circle round 2 do well? Anita? Invited others in, yes, and specifically, and we had some of that happening in the first round too. But those specific questions were very good at eliciting other comments. So that was good.
They were very good at giving evidence on what they believe.
Yeah, second round used a little bit more evidence. Yeah, which is good because that's what is persuasive in your reasoning when you actually use that evidence. Dallas?
They connected with their information like very well.
Went to lots of different parts of the learning. What else did they do? Could you all hear them?
Not all of them.
A few that need to pump up their, project their voices a little bit more.
They use their lungs.
Okay. What else? What else did they do well? Connection statements. Did we use good connection statements? Yeah. Yeah, very good. And these skills, you will become more and more comfortable with these right now that you're feeling awkward with. Did we have more silence in this round?
Yes.
Yeah. And so often, especially in today's day and age, silence can be awkward. But we shouldn't let it be awkward. It really isn't. We need more silence in our world so that we can stop and think before we talk, do our encoding. But that silence is okay. You can use that time to encode what you're going to say and how you're going to say it. But it was so good that when you had some silence, some of you were encoding, figuring out, okay, how can I pick this back up? Asking specific people, asking specific questions. One thing I noticed in both first and second rounds was that, and I don't actually remember if I mentioned this in this particular class about the yes/no questions. Oh yeah, I did.
Yeah, you
Does anyone have anything else to add? is a yes, no question, right? How could we have reworded that to get more comments?
What's your opinion?
Yeah, what's your opinion?
What would you like to
What-
add?
Yes, what would you like to add? That's a good one, yeah. So more of the open-ended, soliciting your, your curiosity to them, that you want their input. Yeah, oh, everyone did so well. Your first Socratic discussion is under your belt. Everyone from this point forward will be so much better. Fabulous job. What I want you to do now is to take your rubric again, look at what you checkmarked for what you were going to practice, and I want you to put a star over each of the skills that you ended up using. Maybe you used a lot more than you even thought. Maybe you didn't do a couple of them, but you did 3 others that you hadn't even thought you were going to use. Okay? And then make sure your name is on there and put them on the desk by your books. Good job.